all you powerful manifestors to the AOM Art of Manifestation channel. I'm Manifestation Coach Sterling Mire. In this radio video podcast, I interview the actor Bruce Glover. Yes, I'm talking about Crispin Glover's father. Back to the Future fans know Crispin as the fatherly George McFly. But unless you belong to an older generation, you may not know that Bruce is a prolific actor with over 50 years in film and television. I'm talking about classic films such as Chinatown, Walking Tall, and James Bond's Diamonds Are Forever. In this interview, we talk about how to master being the hero on your own journey and also finding the passion and purpose in your life. So enjoy this interview with the ageless 90-year-old Bruce Glover, and I will see you just after. Tell us about how you first broke into acting. I mean, how did it start and why did you choose acting?
Well, all of that stuff is obviously interesting to me and to hopefully to the other people. But I had no idea I was going to be an actor. There was no way I was going to get into that silly stuff called acting. I was totally fascinated by movies and everything else. But in my tough guy, working class neighborhood in Chicago, being an actor was like saying, I'm going to wear a dress and makeup. You know, nobody that was a macho, tough guy like you had to be in my neighborhood was interested in acting. But I had an instinct for it, and it was happening to me without my realizing it. Now, what I did have that I could do was I was an athlete, and I was a wrestler, a football player. I could play any sport you wanted. Eventually, in my later years, I became a soccer player and created 2 soccer teams and gave one away to an Argentinian buddy of mine and took both the teams into a league. And we didn't lose a game every Sunday for 3 straight years until the league had to get better to match up to us. So acting was a weird thing, but I did have an instinct for it. My father was very religious and forced me to go to a church, Swedish Methodist Hellfire and Damnation Church, and but they did a pageant one Sunday, and I was like a little kid, like 3 years old, and it was Joseph and Mary going from door to door of these various places looking for a stable so she could give birth to Jesus. And I was the last place they got to. And I was like 3 years old and had a little barrel chest. And when they got to me, my one line was no room at the inn. And when they got to me, I said, no room at the inn. And the whole church burst into laughter. And I thought, wow, this is great. And so I said the line again, and they laughed even more. And then I said it again, and finally the minister came up and tried to catch me, and I raced around the altar and through the choir chairs. And finally he caught me and dragged me down the aisle, and me yelling all the way through, no room at the inn. And he locked me in. So I knew I had an instinct for getting laughs, which is what I wanted to do, but I didn't think of that as acting. But there is sometimes and also when my mother used to take me to movies, which were forbidden by my father, but she didn't care. She took me to movies. And I loved movies. And even around that same time, I was still around 3 years old, I saw FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, struggling to get to a microphone to speak, and he had the polio. And that fascinated me. And I used to show my mother some of the things we'd see in the movies, so I showed her Franklin Delano Roosevelt with polio. And she was astonished, and she said, do you love your president? And I went, yeah. What I loved was getting into understanding what was going on with that person who had to do this way of walking. So partly that is, if I'm going to teach a person, I tell them that story. Because partly what you have to do, what I think you have to do, not all actors do it, is you actually have to understand what the character you're going to be playing is going through. So you have to make up, you have to not act, you have to become. And if you become the character, then there's no work to it whatsoever. You're just doing it and responding to whatever comes at you. And in a way, that ties in with what life is about. If you are going to survive this life, and we're all survivors of our own personal hero's journey, and all of you out there are heroes on your own journey, and you have to make your own journey. Nobody can match anyone else's journey. But my journey was a very weird one. We were poor. My father had a little jewelry repair store in the Loop in Chicago, and I got my first job when I was 6 years old, and I never didn't have a job from then on. My first job, I delivered groceries for 10 cents a day, so 6 days a week. So I made 60 cents a week at the age of 6. Somehow 6 was very important. And sometimes I would get an extra tip and stuff, but was what I used to go to movies and buy Hershey chocolate bars and chunks of chocolate. A movie in those days, you could go to the movie for 7 cents, maybe 8 cents, and then it started creeping up over the years, 10 cents, 11 cents, 12 cents, 15 cents. Darn. Anyway, the movies were something that I was totally fascinated by. So I did have an instinct for it, but what I had to do was be capable of, winning any fight that was presented to me, or at least being, coming out as a tie. That's the way it was in those days. But I played football, but I also had an instinct for art. And this is what any one of you who are listening need to look and find, your real instinct. If you want to be happy in your life, you have to find out what you really, really like. What is it in you that you must find out? Not what you crush in order to do something you're forced to do. Sometimes we are forced to do things. So I, in my childhood, from the time I was 6 years old, always had a job. I sold magazines door to door. I later became a delivery boy for a butcher shop with a bicycle. I even at some point in my life became a coal delivery boy. But I worked on my father brought me downtown in the Loop in Chicago. So from the time of 8 through maybe even before 8, he took me down there when I remember I was so small, and he took me down on the elevated train, a streetcar elevated train, and then right into the Loop. And I used to have to make deliveries for him all over the Loop. And then I was offered a job on the corner down the street from his little jewelry shop, watch repair shop, and I made $6 for 6 days' work. I would go downtown every day after school. I would get there from any time, like I would probably get to downtown about 3:30 after I'd traveled from the school, and be there till 7 o'clock at night. And then I would go home, and I would go to school the next day, and then I would go again every day after school, and then I would work all day Saturday, and I made $6 a week. Wow.
But you know what I love that you said? You said that operative word, which is you've got to find your passion. You can't let anything stop you. I mean, this is a show about manifesting your dreams, and you've lived an extraordinary life. You knew you had that instinct, that calling to not ignore it. Don't let anything get in your way, no matter what you had to do temporarily. You stayed on the course. And that's what's so important. I mean, I'm sure it took a lot of courage and bravery at times. I'm sure there were challenges along the way.
Just necessity and intelligence to know what was dangerous and what wasn't. Sometimes you got into dangerous situations. Working on a newsstand, I remember somebody had told some soldier, this was all during, I was working from this time of when Hitler came in, and even the war had started. I was on a newsstand, but it isn't so much of knowing that this is your passion yet. I didn't know that was my passion yet. The art came popping out. I remember that I can remember my first drawing. Back in Chicago days when I was a little kid before the age, everything happened when I was 3, but it was cold in the winter, and if you were outside and you needed to go urinate, you would have to go inside. And I remember we were in an apartment above the main house, and I had to climb up all those stairs and unravel all of that clothing in order to go pee-pee. And one day I had seen a man go pee-pee on the side of the house downstairs. And I thought one day when I needed to, instead of going up all those stairs and unraveling all those clothes, I would go over to that same spot where that man had done it. And I did. I unraveled just enough. And I found that I was very excited about that. So when I got back upstairs later, I pulled out the family encyclopedia. I'd like to say the Bible, but it wasn't. It was a family encyclopedia. And I drew a drawing. And my first drawing that I can remember doing, probably still around the age of 3, was of a house with a big smiley face and feet and a penis. And the house was smiling and peeing. So I wish I could find that drawing in an encyclopedia. If any of you have it, please send it to me.
Well, that courage and that bravery, though, I mean, of course, you had you're at a really young age you were working. But I mean, once you became an adult and you were pursuing the things that you were pursuing, before you really made a name for yourself, you still had to be true to yourself. You still had to be true to your passion despite the challenges that might have come along the way. So how would you describe your biggest influence in your life? I mean, how did they make a difference for you? Who would that be?
Me.
Me. Okay. I got it. So say more about that.
Yeah. Well, what I finding your passion, it may happen by accident, and sometimes it'll peek its way in, like my no room at the inn when I was 3, and or my decision to do a drawing, and I never stopped doing drawings, and I am still doing art, and I've done big paintings, little sketches, and I'm working on an art book right now. And the art book would include various areas of my life. Some of it would also become. I do abstracts also, but I can do realistic things. Probably the first picture in my book would be a picture that I drew with what was something called craypas, which was half crayon and half chalk. And I had bought that in Tokyo, and I was in the Korean War, and I was in an engineer company and a cook. I was a cook in an engineer company. But I had a sketchbook always, and I was standing on a ridge looking down into this field with a bunch of Korean women working on the field. And then 10 miles away, beyond the mountains in the background, the war was going on. And I was amazed by these beautiful Korean workers doing the work in the field. And a lot of people, that's going to be the first picture in my book. It was 1963 during the Korean War. And I was this dumb GI standing there doing drawings of these women who ignored me, and they ignored the boom boom going on beyond the mountains. So that would be the first people. When people say it's a Vincent van Gogh looking thing, but I wasn't influenced by Vincent van Gogh. I was influenced by the people and the surroundings. And again, I just had to do what was there. So whatever in your life is there, let it influence you and overcome what's bad about it, but exist strongly enough to do it. And if you get into the habit of taking on anything that comes at you, eventually you figure out how to do it so you can get to something that you might like more. But in the long run, work is work, and work is fun. I like work. In fact, you reach a point where work isn't work. It's what you're doing and what you're interested in and how you solve this problem or that problem. How do you make this garden grow is the same as doing a painting in a way. So there I was playing football in high school, and I played on a city championship in Soldiers Field in 1949. I was part of a championship football team. Every once in a while, the acting thing would have popped in, like I would do jump out of my seat and run through the audience in the auditorium at the high school, doing something that was a takeoff with some other buddy, or do a fake wrestling show because I was on the wrestling team. And there was always that instinct, but I didn't think of that as acting, and I just had the instinct for it. But what I thought, when I was looking at what I thought I was going to do to get out of this working class niche, I also got a job at the age of 14 in a glass factory. I ladled hot glass. I remember one point I had lied about my age so I could work legally in this glass factory. And one of the jobs I had, which I really liked, was I had a 12-foot long pole with a scoop at the end, and I would go into a kiln of burning molten glass with this thing, and I would have to pull it out, do a kind of a dance step, and then throw it up in the air about 12 feet into the opening for a $250,000 machine being fed by a 14-year-old boy who only got burned part of the time. So that job, and I liked working in the glass factory, but reality was there. I mean, my best friend, the next year when I was still working there at 15, I think I worked there at 16 also in the summers, but in Then at 15, my father's business in Loop was going bad, and he called a family meeting. And the meeting, suddenly all the eyes were on me. But I was suddenly being told that he needed me to stop school for a while and continue working at the glass factory because he needed money. And I thought, oh my God, I was just for the first time I was in a school where I was enjoying being in school. Now, school for me had not always been my most joyful place, even though I had a condition which I'll explain to you later, which it has to do with something that is kind of interesting about how I discovered acting. At one point, I flunked my first grade, and because I didn't know how to read, but I had tricked the teacher by being able to memorize what the words were based on the picture I was looking at, but I had not learned to read. And then one of the teachers discovered I couldn't read. Now, there was a certain reason why this happened. So they gave me an IQ test and to find out if I was, a dummy. And I thought that I was a dummy because they gave me the test. And it turned out I had a huge, high IQ. But I didn't know that for years. I remember probably around 6th grade, a teacher took us into the school library, and she said, okay, all you kids can go to wall 1, 2, and 3, and Bruce and Irene can go to wall 4. Well, wall 4 was all of the books for college and beyond that. So finally I realized, wait a minute, I'm not dumber than everyone else. I'm smarter. So the first book I went to, oddly enough, was Homer's The Iliad. And we are all of us our own Homer on our own Iliad on our journey to find out where we are, like Homer had to do. And and then I remember taking out the original copy that was written in iambic pentameter, and I remember having struggled with that. But I remember the teacher being very impressed that the first book I took out was Homer's The Iliad. And I think I just picked it out because it had a pretty cover of a Greek helmet on it or something. And then I struggled with that thing, and then I brought it back, and then I went to a local library and found a normal in English version of Homer's The Iliad, and but it was in natural English, and I read it, and then I went back to the school library and took out the original Homer, and I was able to get through it. And from then on, I read Homer's The Iliad every year for years, and all of us are on our own Iliad. Each one of you listening is on your own Iliad, and you stay on it because life is a journey, and you can conquer anything by just doing the work you have to do. Whatever the work you're doing, do the work and enjoy doing the work. Then it's not work, it's fun. So I got out of that high school eventually, and finally they skipped me ahead because the teacher thought I was smart enough to get me into high school and get me away from that dumb school where I was being bored because I needed more stimulus than I was getting there. So high school was great. I was playing football, and I was a city championship team, and I was offered football scholarships to a couple colleges. And I was also voted most artistic of my school year class, Carl Scherer's school in Chicago, and I was surprised to find out that I was told by one of the colleges that they had looked at a couple of grades and told me I had to go to another college to prove I could do college level. Again, going back to that condition that caused me to get an IQ test and all that stuff. So I went to a junior college in Chicago, and I played football on that team for 2 years, and we were always good, and I was a good player, but I flunked English 3 times in a row.
Is this because of the inability to read, or you struggle with that? Why did that happen?
Well, it wasn't an inability to read. It was like, the heck with reading. I'll just memorize the lines.
Okay.
So this weird thing goes, I'm not going to go through all of that process. I can do it this way more easily. So there's a certain smartness that is involved with this. It's not dumb. It's skip the hard part and do it easier. So I guess it's a sneaky area. But so I flunked English, and finally the draft board caught up on me and drafted me for the Korean War, and which is where I did that drawing of the women working in the fields, ignoring the war, and women, as they will do, will make things better no matter what's happening. Thank you, women. I'm very lucky to have known terrific women. I had a 56-year marriage with a terrific woman who I lost almost 5 years ago now. And we raised a son together, and we had terrific times. But there I was in Korea. Now, I was there the last 6 months of that war, and then when the war was over, University of California sent teachers over to Seoul, Korea. And my company was near Seoul, and the Army was good enough to let you sign up for college courses. So I picked up 9 hours of college courses. And one of the courses that I picked up, of course, was I better take English to see if I can pass it. And I took the course, and the teacher at the end of the thing, and most of the people in these classes were officers, colonels and majors, and I think there was even a general in one of them. But this teacher pulled me aside, very kind college professor from the University of California, said, Bruce, I don't know what it is about you, but if I go by the rules, and your score on the grammar test, I would have to flunk you again. And he said, but you write beautifully. He had given out assignment to write stories, and I had written 3 short stories, and he said, you are skilled at writing. You have the ability, but you don't have any, you flunked the damn grammar test. Well, there you are. I went to the easy thing for me was to be good at it. And the hell with the rules of how to do it. I guess I kind of know grammar now, but I'm not sure. So he said, I don't know what it is about you, but I'm going to pass you so you can just get through this, because you are not, you don't deserve to be flunked out of English ever again. And I am grateful for that. But it turns out that years later, I discovered what the thing was that caused me to have, flunk English and get me drafted to Korean War. And again, by the way, those things that are disasters quite often are the things that propel you into success. Your ability to overcome whatever things come at you are what make you the kind of person that can succeed at anything, because you can endure and you can learn how to do anything. So some part of me, instead of bothering to learn grammar, had read a lot of books and just knew how to write, and I did. And that's the way I still am. I'm still a writer, I'm still a painter, and I'm still an actor. So I can do any of that. I've taught acting for years. Right now I don't have class anymore, and I had stopped having regular class and started doing privates. But now I'll still do a private online where somebody can get a private acting lesson with me by we work online, we work on the phone, we get you to do smartphone photos of yourself doing monologues that you have done that I give you to do, and we build up a demo, which is about the only thing I can tell you clearly would be useful for you to have a 3 or 4 minute long demo so you could show it to an agent if ever the business opens up enough where there is a normal life going on, if there is ever going to be a normal life again. So if you want to get in contact with me, I have an email, and it's called Real, R-E-A-L, Bruce, B-R-U-C-E, Glover, gmail.com. And give me, and then there's a phone number you can call, 310-398-2539, and leave a clear message with a callback number, and I will call you back. So that number is 310-398-2539. And you can get it from Sterling sometime in the future if you need to. You didn't write it down, and Sterling would give you a number to call. And
yeah,
my
in
email.
fact, I'm going to say this. If any of you callers listening right now, if you really want to ask Mr. Glover anything, look, this is your chance to just call in 516-387-1582, even if it's just to repeat what he said, giving his phone number and email again. But seriously, 516-387-1582. You guys feel free to call. Bruce,
okay,
having that kind of a...
I got to interrupt you. We've got to get. We're at the sticking point where this thing that the guy. I don't know what it is about you, but you have something that causes you to flunk grammar and write beautifully. And nobody knew there was this thing back then, and I discovered it later. And I have a Bachelor of Science in Speech with minors in psychology and history and art and whatever. So I studied a lot of psychology, and I studied that kind of stuff. But I finally stumbled onto this thing that I had. It's called dyslexia. I'm a dyslexic. And in my theory is there are smart dyslexics and dumb dyslexics, and I turn to be a smart dyslexic. And dyslexia means you don't want to do all the little things. You just want to immediately do the great stuff. So you just jump to doing what is good. Instead of worrying about grammar, you just write great. And that's what dyslexia is. So some of you out there listening might be dyslexic, so don't worry about it. Let it be useful, and just hopefully you're a smart dyslexic and not a dumb one. So at that time, I got back. And another terrible thing that happened that, again, the terrible things that happen in your life sometimes are the things that propel you into something good. I caught malaria in Korea, and when I came back, I wasn't capable of picking up a football scholarship at Colorado College, which also had a good art school. And I had to go back to pick up a couple more college credits at a junior college where I played football. And I saw but by the way, before I left for Korea, I used to work out with weights and stuff, and I worked out with Mr. Americas and stuff. And a buddy of mine said, Bruce, you got a good built on you. You ought to go down there and pose at the Art Institute. That's the way we used to talk in Chicago. If you were a tough guy, you had to talk like that. If you didn't have a these, thems, and those accent, you weren't a tough guy. So this tough guy went and posed at the Art Institute in Chicago. And there was a beautiful woman posing across the room. She was totally naked. I luckily had my jockstrap on, so I couldn't I didn't have to show my inefficiencies, where the woman had to show all of her publicity. And she came to me she was totally naked, of course, and she came to me at the break and said, Bruce, how would you like to, and I went, my mind is going, like to, because she was, and then she said, be a gorilla. And I thought, what the hell is this? Is it some new Chicago sex act that you have to do? Turned out she was a stripper, and she needed a guy strong enough to wear a 100-pound ape suit and toss her around for 15 minutes in a strip club. And I thought that sounded like a dignified thing to be doing. So I went to meet the owner of the act, and he gave me the ape suit, and he told me to go down and meet Bushman at the Lincoln Park Zoo. And when I got to the zoo, I went to the gorilla house, or the ape house, and there was a famous gorilla named Bushman. He was down at the far end of the thing, and I was watching him, and there were people in front of the place, and he was magnificent, and I was down with the chimpanzees and stuff. And then finally the people cleared out, and I went down in front of Bushman's cage, and Bushman looked at me. And I thought, that's interesting. He's looking directly at me. And there's nobody else around, and he suddenly said, Bruce. And I was astonished that he actually said my name. And he said, Bruce, don't tell anyone I can talk. I went, okay, Bushman. He said, now, I'm going to give you an acting lesson. And I said, okay. And he said, think my thoughts. And I went, okay, Bushman. And he said, do my moves. I went, okay, Bushman. And he said, that's it. That's your first acting lesson. Get the hell out of here. I went, yes, sir. And so,
Bruce, let's take a call. I've got these call lines are lighting up. Do you mind if we take a break? We'll come back to that story. I'm going to get a caller in here. They've been waiting for a little while. See who we got on the line. Yeah, this is area code 972. Who do we have here? Hello, 972.
Janice.
Hi, Janice. Well, hello. Welcome to the show. Did you have a question for Mr. Bruce Glover?
Well, I have more of a comment. I wanted to tell him how much I appreciated his acting in Walking Tall. My family would gather around to watch it, and it left us an impression. I mean, we all look forward to it, but it was such to have something that everyone, the children, the adults could sit around and enjoy it. No, very clean, no bad languages. I mean, just very good, enjoyable time with the family. And we even got to where we would say, just joking with each other, that don't make us get that stick out. So we appreciate that you made that.
I love doing that film, and I love Buford, who we became very good friends. The first film had to do with the reality of Buford. He wasn't a bully, and he was a protector of his family and his territory, and not a bully out there with a club, which the second and third film started to become. They didn't show the real Buford. Now, Buford was going to play himself in the sequel, and I did his screen test with him and coached him on how to act, because when he walked in to Paramount Studios in Los Angeles, he said, Bruce, I'm scared to death. And here's the guy who had taken on every danger in the world, and he's telling me he's scared to death. And I said, Buford, that's a good place to start. And I gave him a quick 5-minute acting lesson, and he listened to everything I said. And he did exactly what I told him to do, and he was going to be terrific in the movie. And then, of course, he was murdered, and it would have been an entirely different sequel if Buford had survived and lived to do it. But I'm glad your family, I'm glad to hear that they're looking at the original film where Buford is closer to the real Buford, and the second and third film, even though I was in it and I just needed to take the money and try to keep the film somewhat what. But by the last film, it was just a disaster, and there's a lot of people who want to sell a lot of clubs and a lot of guns with Buford's name on it. Buford was not like that. He wasn't a bully, and the club was something that he and I both laughed at as being a symbol of him. He was a man who was keeping up the family and keeping up the law and making sure that everything was going to be safe for people. And I loved hearing your story about your family sitting around and seeing the film and remembering the real Buford. And if you get on my Facebook, you can see a picture of me and Buford together. He's holding my gun, which I picked up his club, and we were laughing about it, but he reached down and pulled my gun out of my wallet, out of my holster, and it's a funny picture if you can find it on my Facebook page. Any of you who want to get on my Facebook and find out more information about what I do and what I've done. If you want to see more about me, you can look me up on all in caps, imdb.com. And if you look that up and then look for my name, you can see demos and footage of me in lots of films, and it's a good place to store out. Now, I should go back to that moment in Chicago.
I know. Hang on one second. I want to just thank Janice for calling in. I do want you to finish your story, Bruce. We also have more calls to take. So thank you, Janice, for calling. And let's get back
You're welcome.
Thank you. And let's get back to your story, your first acting job.
Well, there was...
Or not, your lesson. Sorry, I correct myself.
I was walking around the school there at Webster Junior High in Chicago, where I was going to pick up some more college credits, so I could eventually go and get my degree, and get over my malaria and maybe pick up my football scholarship. And I noticed that when I was doing when that woman who wanted me to do the Apes Act, this was before the Korean War, after Bushman gave me the lesson, the guy who owned the act sent us to Florida, Tampa Bay, Florida, and I've had a booking there of like 2 months of time in doing the Ape Act, and so I was doing this act in a strip club in Tampa Bay, Florida. And in those days, strip clubs might also have like a magician working there. They would also have stand-up comics. They might have singers. The strippers were kind of classier. They could actually dance, some of them. And there was a magician in the club, and in front of a bunch of other people in the dressing room, he decided jokingly to anoint me with his magic wand. He tapped me on one shoulder, then on my forehead, and on my other shoulder, and said, "Bruce, you are an actor." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You make that gorilla so believable, you ought to try acting." And another guy in the club was a singer in the club. Later, he went on to Broadway, and I kept in touch with him for years. He said, "Yeah, you ought to go to acting classes in New York." And I said, "Acting classes? There are classes for acting?" And in a way, I still don't believe that there are acting classes, even though I teach people how to act or how to get to the reality of acting. In a way, learning how to do something is sometimes the wrong thing to do. My slogan is, don't learn how to do it, just do it. Do it. That's what I've always done.
Yeah.
So I didn't learn how to do anything. I just did it. I didn't learn grammar. I just wrote. I didn't learn how to play football. I just had an instinct to knock people down.
Just do it. Yeah. Let's take this next call. Let's see who's on the line. This is 830 area code. Who do we have here?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Joy to the World.
Hi, Joy to the World. What did you want to say to Mr. Bruce Glover? Do you have a question?
Well, I am. Well, yes, questions and comments both. I mean, it sounds like he's having an amazing life. Then from there's no room at the end to space and back and art in between. It's amazing listening to all the things he's accomplished. One of the things that I was curious about was it appears that basically, and I agree with this in a lot of ways, instinct, is that like almost like manifesting what you want your life to look like? I mean, you've done so much. It's just amazing to hear you talk. And I love that you're doing art, or you've done art, and you're still doing art, and you're writing, and all these wonderful things. And I guess you've maybe never thought I should do this or that, but just like you said, kind of live it and manifest it, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And what a full life you're living. I mean, that's all I have to say. So I guess I'm going back to kind of what he was saying about just do it. It's kind of like, you know, when you just do it, you're manifesting it. You're making it happen. Is that not right, or is that wrong, or where are we?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do it the wrong way instead of just doing it. But the feeling should be about how does this feel and how do I enjoy it. So, like when I got into the ape suit and felt like I was the gorilla and thinking the gorilla's thoughts, I was just doing it. Throwing around a beautiful naked lady wasn't that bad either. And enjoying the scaring people with my ape suit and all of that stuff. But realities was always around. I remember strip clubs in those days also had to do with criminals. There were criminals that owned the thing. And I remember one mafia guy down there in Tampa Bay, Florida, a very nice man, was complimenting me on a book. I was carrying a philosophy book. I'm not sure which book it was, but he was obviously was aware. And that same man, one of the nights I saw him walk out the door to the parking lot, and he was getting into his limo, and suddenly another car came whizzing by, and he was machine gunned to death.
Oh my gosh!
And reality is, one of the bartenders said to me, "Bruce, don't tell the cops you saw anything." And I said, yes. So reality sometimes comes in very harshly into life, but you have to survive, and you have to be smart about where you are. You have to know which people are dangerous. You have to know how to let some people know you're dangerous. You need to be able to survive, and you need to be able to not put yourself in situations that dumb you is going to get you in more trouble. So I knew that I had to survive all the time. And when I was in Chicago, I developed the ability where if I was in a fight, I could quite often knock somebody out with one punch. And sometimes I had to survive an equally good puncher until we could both sign off on a tie. Real life is real, and you have to enjoy the reality of it and your ability to overcome it all. So there I was at this school after the Korean War, still had the malaria, couldn't pick up my football scholarship, and saw a thing up there saying there was an audition for a play. It was a Tennessee Williams play, and I thought maybe I should try out for this play and see if that magician with his magic wand was right. Am I an actor? So I went to the audition, and the director, who was one of the teachers at the junior college, said, come back to the callbacks. Now, something in me maybe suddenly got scared of that, or somehow I avoided going back to the callback. And I was thinking of getting some more posing at the Art Institute jobs and stuff like that, so my beautiful body could make me money. And so when one of the days after the callback that I'd missed, I see this teacher coming up a flight of stairs at me, yelling at me, where were you? You didn't come back to the callbacks. I said, no, I got busy with some stuff. And he said, I want you to play the lead. I went, oh, okay. So I played the lead in a character named Kilroy in Tennessee Williams' play. And I got into the play, and I'd never had any acting lessons. I just looked at the script and looked at the people around me, and I also started teaching some of the people around me. You know, I had only seen acting in movies. So in movies, you had to be real, is what I thought, and you just have to look at things and talk after this and see this. And I remember there was a girlfriend that taught me some dance steps for the person in the play, and so I had an instinct for knowing how to do stuff seriously and get people thinking seriously, and also how to make them laugh. And but I remember one of the actors was acting.
Bruce, yeah. I really hate to interrupt you because I love listening to you. I really do. And we're going to have to bring you back on the show. I mean, I'm running out of time here. I've got about 1 minute left, and then we're going to get cut off. But I just want to tell you it's such a privilege and an honor having you on the show. And I think you're extraordinary, and I've always admired, and I'm always inspired listening to you talk. Your overall approach to life, everything that you say, how your roots run so deep, and I really love you for it. And listen, listeners, we got to have Bruce back on. We got to do this. This guy is awesome.
So what did you think about the interview? I love Bruce's wisdom about failures and breakdowns in life can actually propel you to success. Because without a breakdown, we can't have a breakthrough. But what do you think? Leave your comments. Let us know what you thought about the interview. What was your takeaway? And also, if you have any questions about manifesting, please leave them as well. We do read the comments. I do personally respond to the messages, and we might even do a whole episode around your question. If you like this interview and you want to see more manifestation content to help you master the manifestation process, and we are going to be doing all kinds of stuff here, guys. We are just getting the balls rolling. So please show your support and subscribe. Click the bell for notifications of new content. There's going to be all kinds of different stuff here. So stay tuned. If you want more information about mastering the manifestation process, you can always visit the website getyourlifenow.com and also pick up the book, The AOM System Manifestation Mastery in 30 Days on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Thank you so much for watching. Create responsibly.